108 years. Sounds like a long time, doesn't it? 108 years. What is significant about 108 years? I don't know if any of you might have a guess at where I'm going with this. 108 years. That is the time between World Series championships for the Chicago Cubs. 108 years is a long drought and a long time to keep saying maybe next year will be different. So in 2016, after that 108-year drought of championships, experiencing futility, I actually was able to go to a couple of games towards the end of the drought in Wrigley Field. If you've never been to Wrigley Field, it's quite an experience. It's one of the oldest ballparks still being used. In fact, I think it's the second oldest, if I'm not mistaken. It's a great place to go visit. And even when the Cubs were terrible, which was a lot of the time, even when they always had a good fan base that was always going to the games, more than any other sports franchise that I know of, determined that this is going to be our year. And for 108 years, they waited. And finally, in 2016, after that 108-year drought, they won the World Series. Can you imagine the rejoicing that was happening right outside that stadium and in that town that day when they finally won? Well, you don't really have to imagine because it's all over YouTube. Thanks to the modern miracles of cell phone cameras and surveillance cameras, the moment that they won, even though that the people that actually were in the videos rejoicing, the moment they won, outside of Wrigley Field, there are recordings of people rejoicing. And you know the moment it happened. In fact, let's take a look and see if you can tell that moment. There it is. Soak it in. Kind of feel what that's like for just a moment. 108 years coming to an end right in that moment. Okay. So next Sabbath morning, when we open for church, so having visited there, it never ceases to amaze me how loyal that fan base was. What got them through such a long time? Well, I guess the saying is true. Hope springs eternal. And it almost was eternal, but finally it came to an end there. And imagine rejoicing when it finally happened. I want to just talk about rejoicing a little bit today. Why is rejoicing a difficult thing for some people to do? Why is it that we have such a hard time with it? There are people who literally cannot rejoice even when good things are happening. I saw an interview with a comedian not long ago that they were having the interview, I believe it was several years ago. Conan O'Brien did this interview with a comedian on one of his late night shows. And the comedian talked about traveling in airfare or traveling in an airplane 31,000 feet up in the air, traveling 500 miles an hour, sitting in a chair. Yeah. And it was just, that by itself was mind-boggling some time ago. And these people will sit in the chair, and it was at a time when Wi-Fi had just become available on air travel. And so people were trying to get hooked up into the Wi-Fi, and the guy next to him got all frustrated. It doesn't work. And he felt like the world entitled him to this Wi-Fi that he didn't even know existed 10 minutes ago. We have a hard time rejoicing. We're sitting there in a chair, 31,000 feet in the air. We can go from one side of the country to the other in less than 5 hours, and we're mad about Wi-Fi. What's wrong with us? Why do we have such a hard time with rejoicing? I want to rejoice in things, even when it doesn't seem like it's going well. I don't like overusing the sports analogies, but my son is a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan. He had reasons to rejoice recently. I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan. It's been a few years. They played each other the first game of the year, and my son and I are in the same room watching this game together. The Bucs won with a walk-off field goal, basically, and he's rejoicing. You know why I could rejoice? It's because he was rejoicing. And I could say to him, you know what? What a good game. They played a great game, and that was fun, wasn't it? Because frankly, what does it matter at the end of the day who won the game in my personal life? So rejoicing, why is it hard for so many people? I want to talk about rejoicing today, especially looking at Philippians chapter 4. Starting in verse 4 and really kind of honing in on that just a little bit. It says there, always be full, this is the New Living Translation, always be full of joy in the Lord. I say it again, rejoice. Our song was based on this text today. Rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say rejoice in another version. Now, that's a nice text. But when you're going through hard times, sometimes people will share a text like that, and it just comes across to me as being a little trite. You know, when people are going through difficulties, we sometimes as human beings need to realize that just sharing a few words, rejoice, ain't going to fix it. There was a cartoon several years ago, long time ago. This was one of the original Peanuts cartoons. And it features Snoopy shivering in the cold and two girls coming up to Snoopy and saying to him, be of good cheer. And then they just walk off. He's still shivering in the cold. Words like that can seem trite at times, and we have to be careful how we share things like that. Sometimes, by the way, just a little bit of a hint, a little sidebar. Sometimes it's better to listen to people and just keep your mouth shut, because sometimes people just need to be heard when they're going through difficulties. In the context of what we're going to talk about today, there is a church in Philippi that's going through difficulties. And these are the words that Paul shared with them to rejoice. Now, how is it that a church and a people that are going through difficult times can continue to rejoice? Well, Paul didn't just say those words that I just read to you, by the way. There's a lot more to the story that we're going to get to here. His circumstances, even with Paul, you would wonder, how could he even say that he was rejoicing? He was writing under house arrest when he wrote those words. He was basically a prisoner. His circumstances would not lead you to think that even Paul himself should have been rejoicing. And yet, when you read through Philippians and you compare it to his other writings, this is basically Paul's happiest letter. You don't see a lot of negativity at all. You don't see a lot of rebuke, anything like that happening throughout Philippians like you do in some of his other writings. It's his happiest work that he's writing from prison, basically. Let that sink in for just a little bit. Why could he rejoice? It's because his focus was locked in on Christ and his life and the lives of those who were around him. God is not to be contained in just our suffering. He is not contained just to our happiness. He is with us through all of the trials and through all of the successes that we experience. And when we remember that, it helps us to rejoice. There were all kinds of things that were happening in Philippi in those days. Festivals were held in honor of Caesar, the goddess Roma, or other gods. The whole town would participate and parade through the town with these banners and images and sacrificial rites and speeches and food and cult, self-mutilation, all kinds of crazy things that if you saw it today, you'd be horrified. Jews and Christians that didn't show up to these things were considered to be anti-Roman or unpatriotic. Got to be careful how we share those kind of words anymore. Patriotism can't always be a bad thing. But when it comes to choosing between Christ and a country, what are you going to do? Rumors would flow actually from these people that when the Christians got together and they would do things like participate in the Last Supper, where Jesus said things like, "This is my body broken for you, eat it in remembrance of me," rumors would get around that the Christians were getting together to eat flesh. Like literally. And it's this kind of things that they were basically being accused of. They were accused of all manner of vice and all kinds of things like this. And so they experienced persecution. They experienced difficulties and trials and tribulations that, quite frankly, in our world today, we can't really understand. And yet Paul says, rejoice. How do you rejoice? Let's take a look at the context of this just a little bit further. Let's read around this text. Philippians chapter 4, verse 2 to 3 says, "Now I appeal to you, Euodia and Syntyche. Please, because you belong to the Lord, settle your disagreement, and I ask you, my true partner, to help these two women, for they worked hard with me in telling others the good news. They worked along with Clement and the rest of my co-workers, whose names are written in the book of life." So we have two women here that are having a dispute. But these are two women who historically have gotten along and been able to share the gospel with people around them. And what Paul wants out of this is for them to return to being able to do that together again. These women were ministering to people around them in the gospel. And if they're not getting along, that's a problem, because the world around us sees these kinds of things and they judge us a lot of times. Our reputation is affected by things like this. And so get along, he says. Work out your differences. Get back to sharing the gospel. In the next verses, he says, always be full of joy in the Lord. I say it again, rejoice. Let everyone see that you are considerate in all you do. Remember, the Lord is coming soon. A cheerful spirit should mark a Christian. It should be noticeable to people around us. But I would say this, it can't be faked. People can spot a phony from a mile away. You can't just fake being cheerful all the time. That's the kind of fakery that comes when we just say, be of good cheer, and don't actually help. A cheerful spirit should be noticeable, but it cannot be faked. In the Word, in the New Living Translation I just read, it said, be considerate in all that you do. Well, that word, considerate, means maybe a little more than we thought it might have meant. In the translation from Paul's words, it could mean to be fair, it could mean to be equitable, it could mean to be gentle. Fair, equitable, or gentle. It's not just to be seen. People don't just see you as being considerate. It goes further than that. It actually could be translated better maybe as this: be known by everyone for being fair, gentle, and equitable with each other. With such a reputation to be gained, anyone with any sense would realize that any of these crazy rumors of incest or flesh eating among Christians just were not true. Because if you're known for being fair, gentle, and equitable, if somebody says, oh, they're out there eating each other's flesh, they'll say, that's ridiculous. That doesn't even sound like them at all. I want, as a church, for a community that we're reaching out to know us for being fair, gentle, and equitable with each other and with the people around us, so that if the rumors fly, the community knows that's not true. It's not just to be seen, it's to be known. We're to be known for rejoicing. We are to be known for being fair and gentle. And you can't be known for the opposite if you're already known for this. So what is Paul, in the midst of all of these issues and all the issues of the church, telling us? Be known for your joyful spirit, for your fairness, for your gentleness with people. So I ask you, church, as individuals and as a church, what are you known for? Do people see you as being joy-filled? Do they see you as being gentle, being fair, being equitable? Do they see you being a person that they want to be around? Someone with a reputation that dispels any of the rumors that could fly about us or about you. What are we known for as a church family? Because here's the thing, we are a collection of perceptions, aren't we? Someone could walk in here today and be greeted with warmth, or they could be greeted with coldness. They could be greeted, sometimes it just depends on what they see first, isn't it? That first impression makes a big difference. But it also has to go beyond a first impression, because if it's just a first impression, they see us as shallow. Someone could walk in here and feel included, or they could feel like an outsider looking in. Someone could easily converse with us, or they could hear a language they'd never understood and don't now. I'm going to pick on us all for just a moment. And I'm not pointing fingers or condemning or anything like that. But if you did not know who we were, and you walked in for the first time today and somebody extended a hand and said, "Happy Sabbath," what do you think you're going to think about that? Happy what? They don't even know maybe what that is. So we sometimes have to be careful. I mean, we get into the habit of speaking a language that is very internal, and there's nothing intrinsically wrong with it, but sometimes people get a little bit confused, and we need to just check ourselves a little sometimes, because we don't want to make people feel like they're outsiders. And by the way, if you say that to people, look, that's fine, but just make sure that you're ready to say what that means if need be. Someone could come in here today and see us as concerned for the health and safety of our community, or they could see us as people more concerned with our convenience and comfort. We could be seen as people who are full of joy, or we could be seen as people who are worried constantly about the future. I want to be known as a joyful person. I want my church to be known as a joy-filled church. And this is only possible, by the way, if we realize that we cannot be our only focus. Self has to be removed. It means that others around us have to come into greater focus so that there can be an earned reputation that we can be proud of. So with that in mind, how can we become known for rejoicing? Well, first of all, self cannot be the focus. But let's go deeper into this. There's more words to be shared from this passage. Philippians chapter 4, verse 6 through 7 says, "Don't worry about anything." Okay, that could sound trite too, couldn't it? Don't worry about anything. Well, we got a lot to worry about. If we want to worry, we definitely could find a reason to, like right now. But it says, don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. And tell God what you need and thank Him for all He has done. Then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. His peace will guard your hearts and minds as you live in Christ Jesus. My first impression about this is that I'm taking the focus off of myself and what's bugging me and putting it on what God's doing. That, I believe, is a huge first step that we can take. Take the focus off yourself and put it on what God's doing. Do you have reason to worry? Yes. We could think of 10 things to worry about pretty fast. I would hope that we can think of 10 things even more quickly, and maybe we need to practice that more. Maybe we need to start thinking 10 blessings, 10 things that God is doing in my life. But this goes deeper. To worry, Paul writes, is to be anxious in other versions, but it also means to be troubled with cares or to look out for and promote one's own interests. So when Paul is talking about this, he's not just saying don't worry about random things. It's stop worrying so much about yourself, your self-promotion, and your self-interests. In the context of this passage, maybe we could go back to those two women for just a moment that are having a dispute. What if one was worried about the other's method for spreading the gospel and was becoming critical of what the other was doing? What if the other person thought that her way was better than the other woman's way, and so she was defending her way and telling the other woman, you were wrong in how you're doing this? I don't know what exactly they were fighting about, but let's just imagine for a moment that Euodia was discomforted by something that Syntyche was using to speak of Jesus in new and different ways. And she thought to herself, and maybe even expressed it, well, we didn't do it that way before. That would be kind of like promoting one's self-interest in their methods in doing the right thing even. We don't know exactly what they were doing, but this idea of worry leading to conflict, well, it's not a new one, is it? Frankly, I think some of the worst conflicts that we've ever experienced in our life, in history, between nations, between people, happen because we're so worried about ourselves and what's happening in our lives and what's happening around us that we can't see that the other person could also be correct. So what is Paul's advice here? Basically is stop fretting. Stop fretting about all of the things that are happening around you and what you think about them, and get to praying. As Paul wrote it, bow before God, express your ideas and your concerns, and let it go. Allow him to do what he wants to do. And what is the result from that? Paul tells us that it is peace. It is God's peace, and as the Bible defines peace, it is the peace that we as redeemed sinners have with a perfect God. But that peace, that friendship with our Creator, is something that is to be shared and spread to others. This peace guards your heart and mind. It literally means to protect your heart, your mind, from the invasion of those thoughts that you were having before of self-promotion, of self-focus. It protects your heart and mind from those kinds of thoughts, from invasion of self, from the invasion of worry, from the invasion of anything that blocks rejoicing, from the invasion of anything that is not from God. As we have over time discussed various things and approaches to ministry, even here at the Apopka Seventh-day Adventist Church, one prayer that has come back into my mind over and over again and that I've used several times is, Lord, if it's from you, bless it. If it's not from you, block it. It's pretty freeing to be able to let go of worry when you pray that kind of a prayer. That's the way I've been able to let go of a lot of worry and concern over things that might happen. And there's times that we're going to struggle. You know that. We can pray that all we want, and there's times that we have tensions. We have personal, internal things that are going on that we have a hard time with that sometimes. And it's a matter sometimes where that has to be prayed daily. Lord, if this is from you, bless it. If it's not from you, block it. And that includes even plans I have not made yet. So how do you rejoice in this context? Well, I believe that the way we rejoice in this context is to stop fixating. Ready for this? Stop fixating on your problems, on your worries, on your ambition, and on your cares, and get to praying. Let it go. Lord, if this is from you, bless it. If it's not from you, block it. And then rejoice, even if you have to say to yourself over and over again, Lord, I rejoice because you're taking care of this. Lord, I rejoice because you're taking care of this. Sometimes you have to say it 25 times to convince yourself of it. Lord, I rejoice because you're taking care of this. But how do we keep rejoicing? By releasing ourself to God. Self cannot be the focus. And so we have to let go of self and release it to the Lord. We have to verbalize that, guys. We can't just think it. Sometimes we have to say it out loud. God, I'm giving you myself today. Make sure that I am not my own focus every day and every moment. Philippians 4, verse 8 through 9 takes us a step further. It says, and now, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing. Fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. Keep putting into practice all you learned and received from me, everything you heard from me and saw me doing. Then the God of peace will be with you. In the context of the New Testament, in all of Paul's letters, what were the good things going on? We have to think about this if we're going to understand what Paul is saying here. What was so good that he could be thankful, that he could rejoice over, even from a prison cell or when he was in house arrest? What is excellent and worthy of praise that he's talking about? Well, I'm going to read a passage earlier in this letter. It's kind of long, so I'm not going to list the whole thing, but I want you to listen, and maybe you can pick out the things that Paul would tell us are excellent, the things that Paul tells us that are right, pure, and holy, and all these good things. Philippians 1, starting in verse 3. Every time I think of you, I give thanks to God. Whenever I pray, I make my requests for all of you with joy. For you have been my partners in spreading the good news about Christ from the time you first heard it until now. And I am certain that God, who began the good work within you, will continue his work until it is finally finished on the day when Christ Jesus returns. So it is right that I should feel as I do about all of you, for you have a special place in my heart. You share with me the special favor of God, both in my imprisonment and in defending and confirming the truth of the good news. God knows how much I love you and long for you with the tender compassion of Christ Jesus. I pray that your love will overflow more and more, and that you will keep on growing in knowledge and understanding. For I want you to understand what really matters, so that you may live pure and blameless lives until the day of Christ's return. May you always be filled with the fruit of your salvation, the righteous character produced in your life by Jesus Christ, for this will bring much glory and praise to God. So if you're going to make a list of things that our minds can dwell on, of things that are worthy of rejoicing over, of things that are good and holy and pure and uplifting, what list could we come up with just from reading that passage? I see several things. He celebrates in there. He rejoices over a partnership in spreading the gospel. He rejoices over God continuing his work in his people, that it hasn't stopped in spite of all of this nasty things, these persecutions that are around them all the time. That hasn't been able to stop it. He rejoices that the gospel is being defended every day and that love for each other is growing. He rejoices over that. He rejoices that they're growing in knowledge and understanding. He rejoices that they're living pure and blameless lives. He rejoices in the righteousness of Jesus. He rejoices that they're praising God together. He rejoices that Christ has promised, I am coming soon. He rejoices that even when he's in chains for Christ. You know, I've heard it said that you duplicate what you celebrate. Think about that for just a moment. You duplicate what you celebrate. If you celebrate in your life of working and living in Christ, you're going to duplicate it. It's going to become easier the next time around. If your kids see you celebrating Jesus, they will learn to celebrate Jesus with you. If people who never saw us or knew us before walked in here and saw that we were celebrating what Christ was doing through us in this community, we would do it more. And I want to get in the habit, even publicly, of celebrating what Christ is doing. I want to be in the habit of doing a lot of these things, growing together, praising God, growing in our knowledge and understanding of Jesus. We duplicate what we celebrate. And if we started to celebrate regularly the gospel, the mission, and the promise of Jesus, maybe, just maybe, we would start to look more outside of ourselves each and every day, and we would learn to actually rejoice all the time. Paul celebrated the gospel, he celebrated the mission, he celebrated the promise of Christ's return. And by celebrating these things, people don't have time to focus on themselves. They don't have time to focus on their ambitions and the things that are not of God, because what we duplicate, we celebrate. We will rejoice when we celebrate rejoicing. What you duplicate means what you do. And what is it that Paul did? He lived for the gospel. He lived for the mission. He lived for the promise of Christ's return. And so, how is it that we are to rejoice? Disputes maybe would give way to discipleship if we learn to rejoice. Worry might give way to winning souls. Judgment would give way to joy, and just maybe the neighborhood would know that we exist for them, that we care, that we love, and no matter what else is going on around us, maybe, just maybe, they would start to see us as people of hope. Wouldn't it be wonderful if the community around us knew our mission because they experienced our mission? To extend the ministry of Christ into our community with hope and wholeness. No matter what's going on around us, how do we rejoice? Number one, self cannot be our focus. So self has to be given up and released to God. But I want to challenge us one other way. We become rejoicers because we become fixated not on the problems we experience, but fixated on the peace of God, the Word of God, and the mission of God in our lives. A few years ago, my family traveled to Michigan. Had a nice family reunion, but the reason we were there was to bury my grandmother, somebody I was very close to. I couldn't get through the eulogy. I was almost embarrassed, but I could not get through it. But you know what? It's okay. Because even if you can't get through the eulogy, sometimes what comes next is even better. And what comes next was a song that was shared to me by one of my grandmother's students that I've talked about here before. His name's Roger Ryan. He had sent, because of his closeness to her, he had sent a song that he wrote and recorded. And I want to just share a few lines from that with you today because it was so meaningful to us that day. I feel the tears that you cry. I see the pain in your eyes calling to the heart of me. This is Jesus speaking to people. I hear the words that you spoke in your mind saying today there's no hope, but I just want to let you know troubles won't last through the night. What comes in the morning? Sounds like rejoice, doesn't it? Troubles won't last through the night. You say there's no use for your life. Even when things ain't so bright, just sing out your song through the night. Trouble won't last through the night. I rejoice today because I know trouble's not going to last through the night. And no matter what's happening around me, I know Jesus is coming soon. And nothing else other than the gospel and the fact that that promise is true in my life, nothing else matters. If I can fixate on that, I can let go of myself. I don't have to be self-focused so much on the things that just give me anxiety. I can release myself and be fixated on the mission, on the peace of God, and on His Word. And that's what I challenge you today to do. Release self and become fixated on the peace of God, the Word of God, the mission of God. God will do great things in you. But let Him do it, because if it's from Him, He'll bless it. If it's not, He'll block it. We can rejoice always when we keep this in mind. Trouble won't last. Jesus is coming soon. Let's rejoice. Our Father in heaven, You've given us more reasons to rejoice than we can count. So help us to stop counting everything else. Help us to not be so fixated on problems and pettiness and things we want all the time, and to trust You, to let go of that and release it to You, and to become fixated on You. We claim the promise that You're coming soon, and that joy comes in the morning. And may that be what our minds dwell on, and may we learn as individuals and as a church to rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. In Your name we pray. Amen.